Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the Haworth College of Business Entrepreneurship Forum. I'm Samantha Hooker, a marketing specialist at the college, and I'll be serving as the host today. Before we get started, I'll go over the format and overview. Satish Deshpande, Dean of the Haworth College of Business, will introduce our speaker, Rose Lounsbury. She'll give a presentation on her experience as an entrepreneur, which will be followed by a Q&A session. Please use the Q&A or chat feature to enter questions along the way. With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Satish Deshpande.
Good morning, and welcome to the Haworth College of Business. My name is Satish Deshpande, and I'm the Dean. Thank you for joining us today. Our sponsor for this event is Blue Ox Credit Union. I thank them for sponsoring this forum and all that they do to support businesses in the Western Michigan area. Rose Lounsbury, our speaker today, is a keynote speaker, coach, and Amazon best-selling author who helps busy people reduce stress, improve wellness, and create more balance in their lives through simplicity. We're proud to say that she's also an alum of Western Michigan University. So welcome back home virtually, Rose. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Satish and Samantha. I am just so excited to be here back at Western. Virtually, it looks a lot like my room right now, but I'm excited to be back on campus speaking to all of you today. I'm going to go ahead and get my slides going here. And let's get those going. So today I'm going to be talking to all of you about simplicity and entrepreneurship, and specifically about how my personal less is more journey, my less is more life, ended up birthing or creating a business. But before we get started, I do want to know a little bit about all of you. This is not the typical audience that I speak to, and I want to know a little bit about you. So if you could interact with me in the chat box a little bit, I want to know two things about you. First, who you are. In a couple words, how would you describe yourself? And a few things, categories that you might find yourself fitting into. Perhaps you're a student, maybe you're an alumni, maybe you're a member of the faculty or staff, maybe you're a business owner in the community, maybe you're a member of my community and you came here because I sent an email to you asking you if you'd like to come, or maybe you're just an interested member of the public or some other categories. If you tell me a little bit about who you are, and then I also want to know what brings you here today. Maybe you're curious about something or interested in something, or you want to learn more about something, or you have questions. So if you would just let me know a little bit about you. Dana, oh, Dana, I do know Dana. Dana is a member of my community. She's been in some of my programs. So Dana, up early today. I told Samantha before we started, this is my earliest speaking event that I've ever done. Anyone else? Who you are and what brings you here today? Let's see if we can get to know each other a little bit before we get started here.
Rose, we have Sophie in the Q&A. She said she's a third-year student at WMU and is here to learn more to start her own business and how to use these skills in her classes and future career.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, I must be checking the chat and not the Q&A, so I appreciate that, Samantha. Oh, I see some more. Carol, also a member of my community. Wonderful. Fabulous. All right, so we've got some of my people, and Cheryl, working mom, newly minted yoga teacher, Taryn, and she's a student athlete at WMU. Awesome. I was told about the meeting through my organizational learning class. Fabulous. All right, well, good. So we've got a variety of different people here, and I hope that, oh, and Brian, a student at Western. I'm very impressed, and I told my husband I was doing a speech at Western at 8 in the morning on Friday. He's like, there will be no students there. So Taryn and Brian, you are proving my husband wrong, that there are WMU students who get up early on Friday to better themselves and learn something new. So wonderful. He's curious about entrepreneurship and wants to live a less stressed and simpler life. Wonderful. All right, well, thank you for participating with me. I'm excited to be here talking with you, and I'm actually going to be sharing with you today my story, my journey to entrepreneurship. And I created this timeline of what I would consider to be sort of 5 key points in my life that have led me to entrepreneurship. And they are the cookies, the Bronco, the book, the towels, and the business. Now, timelines are a little bit deceiving. There's actually two problems with timelines. The first problem with timelines is when you look at them, you assume that that is all that happened. And any of us looking at a historical timeline of, for example, the United States of America would realize most historical timelines are leaving out parts of the story. So realize this is not my whole story, but it's as much as I can share with you today. The other problem with timelines is that we often assume that when we are past one point of the timeline, that that event is over. But actually, those events from earlier continue to affect us throughout our lives. So really, my journey and your journey, all of our journeys are more like onions where different layers build on each other. But I'm not talented enough to create a graphic that looks like an onion. So this is just going to have to do for today. So we are going to start off with the cookies. So the story of the cookies starts when I'm about 7 or 8 years old. So this is me in second grade. I had a very serious school picture that year. I think I was mad that my mom made me wear that lovely outfit to school that day. And at that age, I was a Girl Scout and I was selling Girl Scout cookies. And any of you who've ever sold Girl Scout cookies, you know this can be a little bit nerve-wracking. You're going up to people asking them to buy something from you. And I lived in the country, so we didn't have a neighborhood where I could just go door to door. My mom had to drive me to sell the Girl Scout cookies. And so my mom was driving me around to different neighbors, and in the country, neighbors means anybody who's within a 2-mile radius. And so we start off selling the cookies. She drives me to a neighbor's house. She walks up to the door with me. I ring the bell. I ask if they want to buy the cookies. I go back in the car, go to the next house. And after a few houses, my mom, I think, decided, all right, now it's time for her to do this on her own. So she drives me to the house. She stays in the car. She said, Rose, you're going to go up and ask them to buy the cookies yourself, and I'll be right here. And I remember getting out of the car, and I walked about halfway up the driveway, and I stopped, and I could not move any further. I remember looking at the door in front of me. I could feel my mom's eyes behind me, and I know she wants me so badly just to go up there by myself and ask, but I am just terrified. I cannot do it. And I stood there for what felt to me like an hour, but was probably just 2 minutes. And then I ran back in the car and I said, Mom, I can't do it. And so that was the moment in my life where I made the decision that I would never, ever, 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 ever have a job where I had to sell things to people. So that is really the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. Not the most auspicious beginning, but every part of this timeline has a lesson. Every part of our journeys has something to teach us. So what is the lesson of the cookies? Well, for me, the big lesson of the cookies is that entrepreneurship is scary and it's okay to feel scared. When we put ourselves out there with something that we have created, that we have put our love and our heart into, and we ask people to invest in it, to put some of their money into whatever we've created, it is terrifying. It brings up a very natural fear of rejection. That is normal, and everyone feels it, whether you're at the level of selling Girl Scout cookies, or you're trying to sell a 5-figure coaching package, or you're trying to sell a product or get investors to get on board with your product. It's scary, and it doesn't totally ever go away, but as entrepreneurs, we learn to deal with it and we learn to push through, and it's going to, what I've found is it continually comes back up, but we've had enough practice dealing with it that we often can then push through and continue to do what we're meant to do. But entrepreneurship is scary, and it's okay to feel scared. So now we're going to move on to the Bronco, and I put some time frames in this timeline so you can see the approximate time that is passing. So about 10 years pass from the cookies till we get to the Bronco, which you all are familiar with if you are a WMU person. So this is me at about 18 years old, a freshman at Western Michigan University. I'm giving the Bronco a kiss. I don't know what this picture was. I think this was like that beginning of the year student organization thing where everybody's signing up for different organizations. And so I arrive at Western at 18 years old, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey through Western Michigan University and how that resulted in me becoming an entrepreneur. So I arrived at Western as a medallion scholar, which was such a blessing to me. And I do not know what the medallion scholarship is worth now, but back in 1999, it was a $32,000 scholarship, which paid completely for 4 years of tuition, room and board, and everything, which I'm guessing now is not the case. I don't think $32,000 will pay for 4 years of complete college, but what a blessing for me to arrive at Western as a medallion. And I started off at Western wanting to be a theater major, actually. I auditioned for the theater program. I didn't get in. And then I didn't audition again, which is actually one of the few things in my life that I truly regret. I wish I would have had the courage to realize that often, and now as an entrepreneur, I know when I get a no, in my mind now, I'm like, that's just the first no. They haven't said no to me enough yet. But at the time when I was not in this mindset yet, I thought, oh no, okay, I got to go do something else. So I thought, well, what else do I like to do? I like writing. And so I became a journalism major and I started working at the Western Herald, which was at the time the thing that everybody read before class. This was, I'm totally going to date myself. So there were no cell phones then. And as cell phones did come out, they were not smartphones. So beginning of class in the morning, everybody was reading the paper copy of the Western Herald as they're sitting there waiting for the professor to arrive. So I start writing for the Western Herald. And one of the things I realize as I'm, calling people and doing interviews and that sort of thing is I realize that I am not a very naturally competitive person. And I'm rather shy and introverted, just like I was with the cookies. And to go up to people, kind of push my way to the front and say, hey, I work at the Western Herald, or I work at this newspaper, and I'd like to ask you some questions, felt very uncomfortable for me. I did not feel like this was something that I wanted to do with my life. It kind of was putting me in that same uncomfortable position as the Girl Scout cookies. And I thought, okay, maybe journalism is not the right career for me. Maybe I'm not cut out for it. So my junior year, because I did 2 years of journalism, my junior year, I switched to the College of Education and decided I was going to become a middle school, an English teacher, an ELA teacher. And this for me was a very safe choice. Both of my parents are public school teachers. Education was something that I knew. I'd grown up with it. I'd seen it. I'd obviously been through school, so I assumed that I knew what teachers did. And so it felt very comfortable for me to switch into education. And I tell you that because I want you to realize that there's no necessarily right path to entrepreneurship. These experiences would not necessarily be the experiences of someone who you would think would become an entrepreneur. But I settled on education and I finished my degree at Western with a degree in English education. However, the most important thing that I did at Western had absolutely nothing to do with the degree that I left with. When I was a junior, I took a class called Group Problem Solving. It was called Group Problem Solving, and our professor was Dr. Paul Jelsma. I will never forget this man. Dr. Jelsma was just known for being very unusual, and his class was very difficult, and nobody was really quite sure how to get a good grade in his class. And the whole premise of group problem solving was Dr. Jelsma had you form a group and solve a problem. That was your assignment for the semester. Create a group, solve a problem. And that seems simple, but that is actually very challenging because Dr. Jelsma talked about how you really solve problems. And he said, I don't want you to solve a problem that exists just for this semester. I want you to solve a problem so that when you are out of this class, that problem continues to stay solved. So he specifically said, you can't just raise money to give to a charity. That doesn't solve their problem moving forward. You need to create something that continues to solve problems after you're gone. Again, very difficult task. I remember one of the groups he always talked about as like the stellar group was a group that had raised money to buy a brick making machine. And they had sent this brick making machine to some needy country. And that machine to this day was still making bricks that were allowing people in this country to build homes. He's like, that's the kind of problem I want you to solve. So we're all like, oh my gosh, how do we do something like that? How do we beat the brick making group? So my group decided we were going to be one of those groups. We were going to be one of the groups that Jelsma was going to talk about after we were gone. And so we looked around campus. We said, okay, what problem do we need to solve? And at the time, the number one problem that we saw was drunk driving. This is before Uber, before Lyft. There's no real taxi service in Kalamazoo. I mean, you could call a taxi, but it would take them maybe 45 minutes to get to you. And drunk college students are not going to wait 45 minutes. They're going to drive home drunk. And so drunk driving was the culture. It was very, very common. And so we said, okay, we're going to solve the problem of drunk driving on campus. And so we did not solve the problem during Dr. Jelsma's class, but we stayed in that group for another year after the class. We researched safe ride programs at other universities. We visited other universities. And about a year later, we started our own student-run safe ride program called Drive Safe Kalamazoo. And I found these logos online. That one on the top left was very similar to our original logo, which my mom had drawn for us. So Drive Safe Kalamazoo was a student-run safe ride program. We contracted with Enterprise Rental Car. We contacted a local apartment complex. They gave us a free apartment to use as the headquarters for this. We had a big whiteboard where we were, tracking all the rides. And the first semester that we did this, we gave free rides home to students on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. The first semester, I think I worked every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and I was exhausted. It was so much work. It was probably the most difficult thing that I had ever done in college. I wasn't getting paid. This was completely volunteer, but I believed so much in solving this problem. I had created this. I had invested my time, my energy, my love into this, that I could not give my time to this. And Drive Safe Kalamazoo lasted for 14 years. It actually just closed its doors, I think, a couple years ago. And at the end, when they closed their doors, their statistic was that they had given 98,000 rides home. And I can only imagine that in 14 years with 98,000 students who could have potentially been driving drunk, somebody's life was saved. And so when I talk about what I'm proud of about my time at Western, it is this, way more than my degree. And so the lesson here, the lesson of the Bronco, the lesson of my time at Western is first that there are no wrong paths to entrepreneurship. I started out wanting to be a theater major, then I was a journalism major, then I ended up with an English teaching degree, not necessarily any type of degree in business or accounting or marketing or the things that you would think you would need to run a business, but there really are no wrong paths to becoming an entrepreneur. And the second big lesson that I take from this is that the pride you take in creating something will always exceed the pride you take in achieving something. So yes, I am proud that I achieved my degree at Western, but I am much more proud of the thing that I created. And I think that's what entrepreneurs really know. And that's why entrepreneurs are often willing to invest way more time, way more energy into their own business than they might take in working for someone else. Because when you're working for someone else, you're kind of achieving someone else's agenda, right? You're getting a promotion based on their criteria. But when you're creating something for yourself, it's like that's your baby, that's your thing. And you will take more pride in that than achieving someone else's goal where they've set out the things that you have to do to reach it. So those are some of the lessons from that point in my life. We're going to move on our timeline here. The next stop is the book. And I put on here 3 years, 5 years, because this book actually comes into play in my life 3 years post-graduation, and then again 5 years post-graduation. So we're going to talk about when it comes into play 3 years post-graduation. So 3 years post-graduation, I'm in a rather difficult time in my life. I've gotten married. My husband and I got married right out of college, and we're both working in our professional careers. We've put a down payment on a house. We're checking all the boxes of the adult things that you're supposed to do, right? And then we get to the point where we're like, okay, we want to have a family. And we find out that we have infertility problems. And this was a big shock to me, because here I am, kind of this achiever type person. I got the scholarship to college. I graduated from college. I got married. I bought the house. And now it's time to have the kids, and it's not happening. And I got very, very angry. I felt like I was being denied something that I deserved. I was angry at God. I was angry at my body. And I fell into a pretty serious depression. And I had a good friend of mine who I was kind of talking to a lot at this time in my life. And I remember her saying to me, hey, Rose, I saw this guy on Oprah. He wrote a book. Oprah loves the book. And she was also going through a stressful time in her life. She said, I got a copy for you. I got a copy for me. We're both going to read this book, and our lives are going to be better. And I thought, okay, Kelly, well, we'll see. And so the book she gave me was this book called A New Earth by a man named Eckhart Tolle. So I start reading this book, and it was written in English, but it was almost like I couldn't understand it. I read a few pages and I'm like, I don't actually even know what this guy is talking about. Here I am, an English major, like literary composition is my thing. And I feel like I actually cannot even comprehend this book at all. So I tried to read a few pages. I put it up on a shelf and left it there. And I'm like, I don't know. I just guess I'm just not into that book. So 2 years pass as this book sits on my shelf. And during those 2 years, some rather significant changes happen in my life. That infertility problem resolved and resolved and resolved itself with the birth of triplets in 2009. And I decided when those kids were born that, we'd had so much trouble having a family. We didn't have family that lived nearby, that I was going to stay home. I was going to take some time off from my teaching career, stay home and take care of them for a couple years, which anybody who's ever taken care of children realizes that that is actually not a very easy job. Taking care of babies, especially 3 babies at once, is not a very easy job. And so after 2 years, I said, I really have to go back to work to save my sanity. And I always say that when teaching middle school, which is what I was teaching middle school, if that's your sanity saving technique, your home life is pretty crazy. So I went back to work full time, but this created another problem in my life because now instead of just one job, I had 2 jobs. And anyone who's been a working parent knows this. You have your first job that you work all day, the professional job, and mine was teaching middle school. Then I would come home to my second job, which those are my kids at 2 years old. And it's a professionally posed photograph, so don't let the happiness and everyone's getting along look fool you. That's not an actual realistic representation of what life is like with 2-year-old triplets. But I start working these 2 jobs now, and I realize that life is pretty stressful, actually, working these 2 jobs. And what I find is at night, I'm having a really hard time falling asleep. I'm so anxious about all the things I feel like I need to be doing that I am not sleeping. And so I went to my doctor and I said, look, I've got 3 2-year-olds, I've got a full-time job, and I'm not sleeping. I said, I got it, something's got to happen. And so my doctor throws Ambien at me. He's like, here, sleeping pills, that will solve your problem. So I start taking the sleeping pills, and that helps and it doesn't help. It helps in that, yes, I do fall asleep, but it doesn't help in that I don't like having to take prescription medication in order to sleep at night. And, there are side effects, and I just am not 100% comfortable using medication to fall asleep every night. So I started thinking, well, what else could I do to help me go to sleep, to help me just calm down before I go to bed? And I thought, well, what if I read a really boring book before I went to bed? And guess what I happen to have sitting on my bookshelf for the past 2 years? A really boring book. And so I get this book out, I open it up and I start reading it. And it was like a completely different experience. I have never been so affected by a book as I've been affected by this book. And Eckhart Tolle in the foreword of the book says, this book will either change your life or it will be meaningless. And I saw that experience. The first time I read it, tried to read it, it was meaningless. And the second time I read it, it changed my life. Just to kind of know, when I had gone through the infertility experience, I had lost a lot of my faith in things beyond what I could see. I got angry at God, I got angry at the world. And so I kind of was to this point where I thought, well, everything is just what we can see. And if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And we're here and we live our life and we die, and then we're gone, we're done. And in this book, he talked about this thing called the inner body. And I was like, what the heck is the inner body? I do not even know what this means. He said, you can feel your inner body. And he said, I want you to just sit and feel your hands, not feel them with your fingers, but feel the energy of your hands, the inner body of your hands. And then he would have you feel the inner body of your arms and your chest. And I remember the day that I sat in my chair in my living room. I said, okay, I'm going to try this whacked out, whatever stuff this guy's talking about. And so I sit there and I'm like, okay, feel your hands, feel your arms, feel your chest. And I physically felt for the first time ever in my life, it was like a spiraling energy. I could feel like emotion in my body that I had never felt before. And it actually brought me to tears because it was like in that moment, it restored my faith and belief in something beyond what I could see. Because now I could feel this thing in me that I didn't even know what it was, but it was something else beyond the realm of what I could see with my 5 senses. And so I started every morning, I realized that it was like this calm. There was like this undercurrent of calm in the world that I could, and I felt as if I had this giant straw, that if I wanted to, I could stick that down into the calm that was the undercurrent of my life, and I could drink from that. And it changed my whole life. I can remember in the mornings driving to work. So I started every morning getting up and I would just sit for maybe 5 minutes. I didn't realize I was meditating, but that's what I was doing. I would sit and I would just feel that. I would feel that inner body. I would feel that calm. And I kind of became almost addicted to it. Like I couldn't start my day without sitting and just letting myself feel that for a while. And it changed everything. I remember driving to work and I had to be at work really early. I had to be there at 7. And I'd be driving to work at like 6:30 in the morning. It is dark, it's early. Nobody wants to be driving to work 6:30 in the morning in the dark. And I got to this stoplight and I can remember I felt so much joy. I remember thinking, if I died right now, I would be so happy. It was like I was high on life, literally high on life from reading this book. And I read this book so slowly. I would read it like 2 or 3 pages at a time because I was underlining almost every single word. And it was like every single page felt like it was blowing my mind and it was taking me deeper into this sense of peace and sense of calm that I didn't even know existed. And it had always been there. I had just never been aware of it. And so, why have I taken so much time to talk about this spiritual awakening, to talk about this book, and what does that have to do with anything, with entrepreneurship? And I think the lesson of the book is if you want to drink water, you have to open the tap. If you are thirsty for something, whether that is actual water or happiness or better relationships or improved finances or peace, or you want a career that fulfills you, you want a relationship that fulfills you, if you're thirsty for something, we can't say, oh, I'm so thirsty. I want this. I want happiness. I want more money. I want this. But look at a closed tap and not open it. And that's what so many of us are doing in our lives. That's what I was doing in my life. And what this book did was it helped me actually turn the knob and open the tap so the water could flow through. Because guess what? The water's always been there. The peace, the relationships, the happiness you're looking for is there. It's always been there. But we have to open the tap to allow it to flow into our lives. And unbeknownst to me, this was actually the thing that awakened me enough to pursue my entrepreneurship career, but I didn't know at the time that that's what was happening. So things are going to start to happen a little faster now on the timeline. 4 months later, the towels happen. And if you've seen my TEDx talk, you might have heard me talk about my towels before. So the towel story starts in Christmas of 2011. This is me and my kids that Christmas. So this is, right after I've started reading Eckhart Tolle's book. I've recently gone back to work full time. All these things are happening. We go to Christmas up at the grandparents' house and the kids are just showered with gifts. And I remember we came home, the van is packed with presents. I walk in the house and I realize, oh man, we don't have room in the house for the stuff we already own. And I have no idea where I'm going to put the new stuff. And it was this really kind of overwhelming and defeating feeling. So I'm like, oh, all this stuff. What am I going to do with it? I'm overwhelmed by it. It's supposed to be a blessing, but it feels like a curse. And a few weeks after Christmas, I had lunch with a good friend, and I was complaining to her about Christmas. I was saying, we went to visit the grandparents. We got so much stuff. I don't have room in my house for the current stuff. I don't know where to put the new stuff. And I think I just need to buy a bigger house. And my friend looked at me and she said these words that changed my life. She said, or you could just become a minimalist. And I thought to myself, okay, never thought about that. Just live with what you need. Let me give it a shot. And I went home from having lunch with her and I started reading books and blogs on the topic of minimalism. And I was absolutely hooked. And so a few weeks later, I was in my house. I was going to put some towels away in the linen cupboard. And I asked myself this life-changing question, which was, how many towels do you need? And I'd never really thought about how many towels I needed before. We just had the towels we had and I shoved them in the cupboard with the other towels and that was what it was. But I'd been reading about minimalism. I thought, well, how many do I really need? And immediately I said, well, 2 per person, which felt really wrong because that's only 10 towels for a family of 5, which was definitely not the number in the cupboard. And so I asked my husband, Josh, I said, do you mind if we just have 10 towels? And he's like, I don't care, that's fine. And so I decreased our number of towels to just 10 towels. And what's interesting about this story, the whole reason I tell the towel story is because I want you to realize now that's 10 years ago in my life. And in that time, I have not increased our number of towels and everyone in our family has been dry when they needed to be dry. So this early venture into minimalism taught me two very clear lessons. And the first was that I can live with a lot less than I think I can. And the second is I can definitely live with a lot less than society tells me I should. And so what I did after the towels was I continued to go through my house asking myself different variations of the original question. Basically, how many blank do you need? From coffee cups to shoes to toys for my kids to papers. How many of any of this stuff do I need? And what happened for me was over the course of about 8 months, I let go of about 70% of our possessions, which I know sounds very dramatic, but the most dramatic thing was not in what I let go. It was in what I discovered underneath. Because underneath all that physical stuff, I found three really amazing things. And the first was free time. I found myself at the ends of my day having some time to sit down on my couch and just relax, which for a full-time working mom with three toddlers, is a very rare thing. I found that I had more peace of mind. I felt more calm and relaxed at home. I felt more calm and relaxed at work. And the third thing I found was clarity. So the first time since having my kids, I had this mental clarity and also realized I've been reading Eckhart Tolle's book at the same time as well. So that's contributing to this, but I have this mental clarity, which allows me to do something really crucial, which is dream. I start to dream. I start to think beyond the situation that I'm in, and I start to have ideas. There was not space in my brain for ideas when I was spending a large portion of my brain space dealing with my physical things. And because of these three things, my life starts to really move in a different direction. So what is the lesson about the towels? If we look at this through the lens of entrepreneurship, what's the lesson of this? Well, the lesson is to solve a problem that you have so that later you can solve that problem for others. So my problem was I had too much stuff. I couldn't fit it in my house and it was stressing me out. I solved that problem for myself, which allowed me then later to very authentically help other people solve that problem. And I think that because I've done this myself, because I've not always naturally been a person who is very minimal or very simple, I'm a much more authentic coach and teacher for the people I help do this through my business. There are some people out there who say, well, like I've always been really organized, or I've never wanted to accumulate a lot of stuff. And they can also help people. But I know for me, some of the best teachers are the people who struggled, right? When I was a teacher in schools, I had been a very good student. School had been very easy for me. So I know I was a good teacher, but I'll tell you the great teachers that I worked with, the greatest teachers were the ones who had found school to be difficult because they understood the struggle that their students were having and they had compassion and empathy, like true compassion, because they understood where they were coming from. And so when you think about it, if you want to be an entrepreneur, yes, look at your gifts and look at your talents, but really look at the problems that you have solved for yourself. What have you overcome? And how could you use your experience of overcoming something to help somebody else who's where you used to be? All right, so we're moving to our last part of our timeline, which is the business. And again, 2 or 3-ish years pass between the towels and the business. But here's what's happening in those 2 or 3 years. I am so excited about all this minimalism and simplicity in my life that I started a hobby blog about minimalism. And I'm just writing about here's what I did, and here's a before and after photo, and here's how I feel now that I've done this. And so I get a few people who start reading this blog. And so I've got a little bit of a following out there on the internet. And also my kids are growing up. So they're about 4 or 5 years old now. And I realize, you know, time's going quickly. They're growing up. They're going to be in school full time. And I wanted more time with them. I wanted to not be the person who gets home at 3 or 4 o'clock, which for kids is the worst time of the day. I wanted some of the good time of the day with them. I wanted some more flexibility so that if I wanted to go to the Halloween parade at their school, I could. And as a teacher, you don't actually have a lot of flexibility in your day when you're a teacher. And so I thought, well, what if I got a part-time teaching job? What if I approached my principal and asked for part-time? And so I did. I created this whole proposal. I found another teacher who wanted a job share with me. We wrote out this whole thing and we said, hey, could we do a job share? And the answer was absolutely not. We don't do that here. And you're either going to work for us full-time or you're not going to work for us. So I decided I was not going to work for them. And I say that very simply here today, but I want you to realize that was an agonizing decision. And also realize that when I left my career, I wasn't leaving it with no income and no health insurance. We had my husband's job. We had health insurance through his job. So I say that because you will hear in there's entrepreneurship lore out there where you'll see people say, I quit my 9 to 5 and 2 weeks later I was making 7 figures and you can do it too. And perhaps that is true, but that's not the case for most entrepreneurs. And I actually think that's a rather dangerous story to tell. So yes, I left my 9 to 5 without an actual plan of what I was going to do, but I had income. We were not going to starve. I had health insurance. And also when I left, I started 3 jobs. I started my business. I also started substitute teaching, and I started doing professional development workshops for Miami University. So that is much more the actual journey to entrepreneurship. And what I found was that, as time went on, as my business grew, I quit the other 2 jobs slowly until I was, after a few years, just doing my business. But I want you to realize that's really more what it looks like to start a business. It's not that quit your 9 to 5, tell your boss to screw you, and then start your own thing. That might work for some people, but that is rare. Okay, so I start my business, and about 2015 is when I kind of officially, I fill out the forms for the state of Ohio. I have officially become, and I call myself an in-home professional organizer because that's what I know of as what I do. And my logo, I call my business Less. This was my logo made by my neighbor, Amy, who's a graphic designer. Use your resources, right? It's a great logo. I don't use this business name anymore, but this was my original logo. And I start working for some amazing clients. Now, these first 2 before and afters, these are from my first 2 clients. The one on the left was my mom. My parents have an old farm. They used to live in an old farm, and this was the well house, which had kind of just become a place to store a bunch of junk. I said, hey, Mom, can I clean out the well house and take a before and after picture for my website? And she's like, absolutely, you can. And then the one on the right was my sister's basement. And she said, yeah, my basement's kind of crazy. I said, hey, how about I come over and I clean out your basement and I take before and after pictures and put them on my website? She's like, great, of course you can do that. Why do I show you these pictures? Because this is how businesses start. You start by doing things for people you know, friends, family. Hopefully you're getting paid. Likely you're not. I don't think I got paid for either of these jobs. But as a result of these jobs, I started working for friends of friends. Eventually, I started working for people who I didn't know, who found me on Google. And eventually, I got to the point after, a couple of years where it was hard to get booked with me, where you would have to wait, a month or 2 before I could come help you. So this is the beginning of my business. The majority of my business is working in home with people side by side, decluttering and simplifying their cluttered spaces. 2017, I wrote a book. It's called Less Minimalism for Real. And I worked with a coach to help me with the marketing of the book. And I remember her saying, it's so great that you've written this book and now you have a much greater reach, right? You can reach people outside the Dayton, Ohio area where you live. She said, but what's going to happen is, what if somebody in Colorado reads your book and they think it's really great, and then they hire a professional organizer in Colorado? How does that help you? And I was like, dang it, it doesn't help me. And she said, you need to start teaching classes online, which for me was really terrifying because I did not consider myself a very tech savvy person. I had no idea how to take money online. I didn't know how to teach courses online, but I wanted to please this coach very much. And so I started my very first Less Method course. I call it the Less Method. And our goal was to declutter your home before Thanksgiving. It was a 6-week online course. So I started that course. It's a very, very tiny little part of my business, right? The income that comes in from this is not very significant, but I've got my little toe. I've got like a little toe dipped into the online world, which, as you will see in a little bit, is very, very lucky for me. 2018, I gave a TEDx talk, and as a result of my TEDx talk, I start moving more into a professional speaking career. So I start speaking for different conferences, different companies, and I'm really enjoying this. I love being on stage. I love talking to people. It's just so wonderful. And what could possibly go wrong, right? I've got a business where I'm doing a lot of in-home work side by side with people. I'm doing a lot of speaking at events and companies. What could possibly happen in the world that could affect this great business that I have going on? Not 2020. Not a global pandemic. No, that couldn't happen, right? That couldn't wipe out most of my business in a month. Oh, yes, it can happen. And yes, it did happen. I'm going to show you my P&L statement. That's profit and loss statement for April of 2020. This was right after the pandemic hit, right after I lost all of my in-home clients. I lost all of my speaking events. This was my P&L statement for April last year. So I made $648 of income and I had over $4,000 of operating expenses. And you don't need a marketing degree to know that if that's what your monthly bottom line looks like, you will not be in business very long. You will not. And I knew I wouldn't be. I knew I had to change things if I wanted to keep my business going. And so as a result of COVID, I created a 100% online speaking and coaching business. So I transitioned my clients, as many as I could convince to coach with me online. I actually started charging more. And because I'm coaching online, I have international clients. I have clients all over the country. It takes less of my time and it allows me to reach more people because I pivoted my business model. I don't go into people's homes anymore. I realize that I can help them just as well, if not better, by working with them through Zoom. I also started doing all of my speaking events online. Now, I would love to do speaking events in person. I do intend to go back to doing speaking events in person when it's safe for people to do that. But I also found that I really enjoy doing online events. I was telling Satish before we started this today, I said, you know, I would love to be on campus, but I also love that I don't have to wear shoes right now. This also allowed me more flexibility and time with my family. I don't need to drive to a client's house, work with them for 3 or 4 hours and drive home, which is basically an entire day. I can go upstairs, meet with a client for an hour online, and then I can be back with my family. So I have more flexibility and more family time as a result. I also have more income. Despite that miserable P&L statement from April, by the end of 2020, I had actually made more gross income than any other year in my business, because I was willing to pivot and change the way I did things. And with more income comes more possibilities, more opportunity for me to reach more people and have more influence. So what's the lesson of my business? There are 3. The first is try it. You might like it. I started cleaning out things for my mom and my sister and my friends. Give it a try. You may like it, you may not. I don't recommend you just invest a ton of money and invest a ton of time in creating something and then trying it. Start trying it. Like, what's the lowest hanging fruit? What's the easiest way that you could try this out and see if it's actually something that you enjoy? The second lesson is to pivot and realize that this will almost always feel terrifying. So when my coach suggested I do an online class, that was terrifying, but thank God that she did, because then I had some experience doing online work. When I had to pivot my business, instead of going to people's homes and speaking to them in person, to doing it all virtually, it felt terrifying. But I was willing to give it a try and pivot. And as a result, I still am in business today. And then the last lesson of the business is to trust. Because here's the thing, you can't know what will happen next. We don't know when a pandemic will hit. We don't know when we will leave a job and try to start something new. But here's what we can always do, is we can always trust that everything is working together for your highest good. And I underline that because that is a mantra from Louise Hay. So once I read Eckhart Tolle, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of self-help books. Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life is kind of like a classic. And that's one of her things that she tells people to say to themselves every day: everything is working together for my highest good. And that is trust, that is faith, and that is what we need as entrepreneurs. That's what we need as people, right? Whatever you're experiencing right now may not be great, but what you can do is you can trust that whatever's happening to you right now is working together for your highest good. And maybe you just can't see it yet. We often can't see it. I couldn't see that my infertility problems were going to result in a beautiful family. I couldn't see that COVID was going to result in a really great, flexible business that was much more profitable than my previous business. But we can always trust that whatever's happening right now is working together for the betterment of ourselves, which is really the betterment of the world. All right, so we're going to do a quick review of all our lessons here, and then I'm going to take some questions. So the lesson of the cookies was that entrepreneurship is scary, and it's okay to feel scared. The lesson of the Bronco is that there are no wrong paths to entrepreneurship, and the pride you take in creating something will always exceed the pride you take in achieving something. The lesson of the book is that if you want to drink water, You have to open the tap. You have to open up your mind to the possibilities. The lesson of the towels is to solve a problem that you have so that later you can solve it for others. And the lessons of the business are to try it, pivot, and trust. If you would like to continue this conversation with me, I would love to stay in touch with you. I do have a free gift for you if you'd be interested in it. I have a free simplicity starter guide. So if you are looking to simplify your home or your work, but you're one of those people who's like, I know I need to do this, but I don't know where to begin. This is a PDF downloadable guide that will help you. It'll guide you through your home, ask you questions, the same kind of questions I would ask if I was there with you. And based on your answers, you will rank the spaces in your home or work in order, and then you have a plan that you can use to go ahead and simplify it. And you can get that by texting the word less is more, all as one word, to 773-770-4377. If you are a Facebook person, I have a free Facebook group called Minimalism is Fun, where our motto is minimalism is fun because clutter just kind of sucks, because it does. And we'd love to have you join us there and interact in the community. If you would like to check out my book, it's available on Amazon. There's a paperback version and a Kindle version. And if you are a person who likes to hang out on social media, I am active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and my handle is @Rose_Lounsbury. All right, everybody, I just want to thank you again so much for your time and attention today. And Samantha, I think we have about 15 minutes here for questions. I'm going to go
Okay,
ahead and stop sharing, and I will take questions.
great. So the lights have turned off in here. I don't know where the sensor is. So Rose, I'm going to simplify this presentation and finish it without lights. So we're going with the silhouette today.
I think it's great. You
Um,
look beautiful. Your silhouette is lovely.
Thank you, thank you. Um, if you are a Western Michigan student and you are attending for Spurs credit, I'm going to go ahead and put the Experience WMU linked into the chat. You'll find that now. You can copy and paste that into your browser to register your attendance for this event. If you run into any issues, feel free to contact me at samantha.hooker@wmich.edu. Okay, Rose, so the questions that we have here, with regards to the idea of minimalism, is there any easy way to convince other people, specifically a dad, of that? Or is there good small steps to start with?
So when it comes to other people, one of my big rules with simplifying your life is to start with your own stuff. Um, Nobody is convinced by being pressured. And if we want to make change in the world, you know, Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. That's very true, right? We need to be the change that we wish to see. So if you want your dad to live a simpler lifestyle, you're probably not going to convince him by telling him, Dad, you need to live a simpler lifestyle. That's like telling someone, hey, you need to become a vegan. No one's going to become a vegan by you telling them they need to become a vegan. However, let's say you decide to become a vegan and you're really enjoying it. Maybe your hair looks better, your skin looks brighter, you've lost some weight, you've got more energy, all these things. Based on your example, other people might want to become vegans with you, but they are not going to become vegans by you telling them that they should. Same is true with minimalism or simplicity. So if you model a simple lifestyle, if you model a minimalist lifestyle, the people that are around you will notice that and get on board. I am frankly rather shocked all the time. Like I'll be out in my community at the grocery store and someone will say, hey Rose, you'd be so proud of me. The other day I decluttered my closet and I was thinking of you the whole time. And I'm like, I'm proud of you. But I didn't have any interaction with them, right? I'm just modeling, putting out in the world on my Instagram, on my blog, my email list, my simple life. And it's affecting people, and people are making change because of my example, not because I'm telling them that they should. So that would be my advice for your dad. Another little trick I have found is sometimes with family members, if you invite them to help you, that's a really easy way for them to kind of have some experience simplifying where they're not making decisions on their things. So let's say, I'm assuming, because you said a dad, I'm assuming the asker is a student. So I'm going to guess you probably have a bedroom at home that has maybe your old high school stuff in it. So maybe when you go home next time, you say, hey dad, would you mind helping me go through some of these old things from high school? Like, I know I don't need it all, but I'm having a hard time making decisions on it. And I was wondering if you could help me. Most people cannot refuse being asked for their help or advice. So your dad likely would get on board with helping you. Well, guess what you've done? You've modeled for him the process, right? And so then you can return the favor. hey, Dad, could I help you go through your stuff in the garage? I'm free on Saturday. If you want, I could come over and I could help you. It's an ask, not a demand. He can say no. That's completely fine. But you've opened that conversation with him. So those would be my things. First, you've got to model it yourself. Then you could invite him to help you. And then you could offer to help him. Much beyond that, I think you've got to let people do what people will do. But usually your influence, you would be amazed what your example will do for other people. And I've seen this in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of nearly all my clients and students, that when they make the change, it ripples out. This even happens in businesses. I've been hired to help businesses declutter and simplify and organize, like the storeroom, all the excess stuff. And they'll tell me, man, everybody in there starts cleaning out their offices. I'm like, yeah, we didn't tell them to, but they just start doing it. So that would be my advice for you.
Okay, and next, do you think that online interaction is more or less the way of the future for businesses? The person asking the question has heard other people say the same, but is a little bit conflicted on the idea that online might be the future.
I mean, I think online is the future. Not necessarily 100% online. And again, this is going to vary from business to business. I don't think online hairdressers or online massage therapists are going to be making a lot of money necessarily, unless they're teaching people how to do it. But I think having some sort of online arm of your business, some virtual arm of your business, for most businesses is a really good idea. I am so grateful that I started this back in 2017, that I started that one small, tiny little online class, because now that online class is actually a rather huge driver of my business. But yeah, I do think for most businesses, I mean, even education, right? Even Western, I'm sure that you're probably offering more online classes, right? We're realizing that this need for flexibility, this need for a virtual option is the way of the future. And I don't think virtual will ever replace the need for human connection in person. I think we will still gather and always connect in person. But I think, just look at Amazon. I mean, we value the convenience of online interaction, and I don't think that it's going to go away.
Okay, and does minimalism include any technology? They're interested in being more minimal in their life, but technology is a pretty big part of it.
Yeah, so there's a great book called Digital Minimalism. It's by Cal Newport, and if you're interested in simplifying your technology, I would really recommend reading that. But yeah, minimalism, my definition of minimalism or simplicity is getting very clear about what you want and then having the guts to let go of everything else. So when you think of your tech life, get clear about what you want. What do you really want technology to do for you? What do you want your digital life to look like? And if you get clear of that image of what that is, what do you need to have the guts to let go of in order for that to be what your digital life looks like? Do you need to let go of perhaps some social media platforms that actually don't make you feel connected, but make you feel disconnected? Do you need to let go of email subscriptions because your email inbox is crazy? Do you need to let go of the habit of taking 25 digital pictures of one event and then never going back through them? Maybe you need to let go of this sort of like habit of accumulating excess digital photos. So I think it does relate to the digital life. I know I have simplified my digital life quite a bit. I unsubscribe from emails, kind of like it's my job. I've simplified my digital photos so that they're all in the cloud. That was a big one for me because I had a shameful number of digital photos on my phone and I couldn't find a picture of my kids because I have to scroll through all the screenshots. Yeah, I've simplified my time on social media, outsourcing some of that to an assistant, and just really getting clear on like, what do I want to use Facebook for? So for example, for me, really, Facebook is my 2 Facebook groups that I run. When I go on Facebook, I check my 2 groups. I don't scroll. I don't post on my personal page. My assistant posts on my business page, and every once in a while, I'll go through and see if anyone's commented on that. But for me, Facebook is just these groups that I run. And so that's one way within one platform that you can get really clear about what's the value of that for you. For me, the value of Facebook is interacting with people in groups. And so when I go to Facebook, that's all I'm interested in doing. I don't spend time on there doing anything else. So there's the number of platforms that you're on, and then there's really getting clear on the purpose of those, how you want to use them, and then, you know, creating structure so that when you go on and use them, you're just using them for the purposes that actually add value to your life.
Okay, and then Rose, the last question we have time for. Obviously, you know things can change quick and you might have to pivot, but what do you think the next couple of years look like for you and your business?
So one of the things that I see happening in the next few years is I see myself really punching up my online courses more. So it's funny, like the online course with my revenue streams was always like the smallest stream. And what I'm finding now is I love my online course because I kind of can control the time that it is. I can control this is the time of the class and this is the time that I will interact in the group. And I see myself doing less of the personal coaching and really increasing the online course revenue. I would like my business to be mostly driven by my online course and my speaking. And then the coaching that I do, I would like to raise the price of that so that I have just less, like less than 5 personal clients. And most people would be in my programs because I find that what takes up, I want more flexibility even. And what's less flexible is time with clients because they get to, you know, book their own time and it's really focused time and it's wonderful work. But I would like that to be less of my business and more of my business to be focused on groups. Either I'm speaking to them or teaching them. So that's kind of where I see my business moving in the next few years, but who knows?
Okay, thank you. And then Satish, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you, Rose, for a fascinating presentation. Please join us for the next Entrepreneurship Forum on Friday, October 8th, featuring Gordon Van Gent, President of Overneat Creative.